In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Matt Hilton Show. Welcome, and I am so excited about my guest today for a lot of reasons, and you'll soon find out why. So if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and comment and share. And if you haven't already, please go to the Facebook page and like the Matt Hilton Show Facebook and share that and comment on that page too. And I would love to hear some feedback from you as my audience of which episode has been your favorite so far. Yes, and we do have a live audience today. Yay! So thank you, live audience, for being here. So with that being said, my guest today is a person that I find fascinating, the little bit that I know about her, and I can't wait to hear part of her story. So she is the only female elected mayor of Southlake so far, right? So far. And so today's guest is Laura Hill. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Yes, ma'am. She's also an author, and you may see here on the table one of her books, because you've written two, is that right?
This is actually my second.
Okay,
so.
this is your second.
Yes.
Okay. So where the mean girls go. So let's talk about this. Let's just tackle the elephant that's in the room. Now, so where do the mean girls go, Laura?
They grow up. So the whole idea of the book really started on the playground, because we've all, women and even guys have known mean girls. Usually they remember, high school, elementary school. And so I got to thinking, like, where do they go? And obviously it's a concern because they grow up to be women that we work for, women that work for us. Sometimes we get involved in friendships that turn out to not be healthy. And sometimes our sons bring home girls that are mean girls. So it doesn't matter who you are or what age you are. You want to know where the mean girls go and really how to deal with them, but more importantly, how to do better and how to raise our daughters to be better.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about that. So what are some pointers? I have 3 daughters myself and a son, right? So they're older now, but what is some advice for those that are tuning in that are raising young women that you have? What are 2 or 3 points?
I share a lot of stories in the book of girls of all ages. So it's really a timeless book. It's not about, it's not all stories about me, but every chapter is full of 3 or 4 stories of things that have, experiences that young girls and grown women have had. But I think the most important thing with our daughters is to make sure that our daughters are raised with empathy and with humility and kindness. And a lot of that comes, quite frankly, from the examples that we set for our daughters. And, everyone wants their daughters to grow up and be strong and be outspoken and be ambitious. And that's not what a mean girl is. A mean girl is someone who has malicious intent, who purposefully seeks out ways to hurt other girls. And so as a parent, just setting a really good example, being really conscious of the conversations that your daughters overhear, how you talk to the waitress in the restaurant or the waiter in the restaurant, how you talk to the bank clerk, how you talk to the gal behind the counter when you pick up your dry cleaning. Those are
how you talk to your spouse.
Reflection. And most importantly, all the conversations that go on in your house. And too many people, we're plugged in everywhere we go. So our kids were sitting in the back seat in their toddler seats, listening to us talk on the telephone, right? And they can hear everything. Or how many parents have you seen in the grocery store? They've got the little child in the cart and they're on the cell phone, and maybe they're angry, but maybe they're only angry for that moment, but their child doesn't know how to process that anger like we do as adults. So it's really making sure that your child is in touch with their emotional side and not just their I want side.
So is this a book that you knew that you wanted to write? or was it on a whim?
No, well, both.
Both?
So I didn't know it until I knew it.
Okay.
So my first book is called Walking in My Shoes. And when I left office, I was term limited as mayor in 2021. And I had a little bit of a meltdown. I didn't know. I mean, I was looking in the bathroom mirror going, "You're the mayor." And like, "No, you're not the
No,
mayor
not
anymore."
anymore.
You know,
Mhm,
so
mhm.
someone suggested to me, "Why don't you write a book about leadership and start talking to groups of women about leadership and having success in
Mhm.
not just in politics, but in the PTO and in corporate America and in starting your own business." So I wrote Walking in My Shoes as a labor of love, but halfway through it, I said, I know I'm trying to keep it classy, but there are some things I would really like to say that maybe don't fit in this book. And so
Okay.
in the back of my mind, this book
This-
was happening. And I wrote this book in 3.5 months. I mean,
Oh,
I
wow.
knew what I wanted to say. So yeah.
Okay. That's impressive,
Oh, thanks.
to say the least. I mean, because I have a couple of books in my mind too, and I've heard that you focus on one.
Yes.
Like you don't try to write both at the same time, right? And so did you have that discipline? Were you able to complete the first one before you started writing this?
Yes and no. The way I write, it's very interesting. I actually record my books voice to text,
Okay.
and then I export the text to a Word document. So I'm driving home from work and you're getting whatever's on my mind that day. And it could be good or it could be bad. And so I was able to do that and then go home and sit in front of the computer and finish editing the first book. But this book was really, I was motivated to write this book. And so I was willing to do the hard work to get the other book done. So the first book came out September of last year, and then this book just came out the end of September. So just a month, not even a month and a half ago.
Okay. Are you writing another one?
Ugh.
Mm.
Well, here's the problem. So I would love to write something fiction. I'd like to write a murder mystery or something. You know,
Okay.
everyone thinks they're the next great murder mystery writer, but everyone keeps telling me I need to stick with what I do best. So I just can't get motivated to do either. So
Yeah. What is next for you?
what is next? Well, I hope there is a next. I was sharing earlier with the audience that after I was mayor and wrote my book and was going out and speaking to corporations and to local philanthropic groups, and there was an opportunity to run for state rep. Texas had redistrict. There was a new district, not in Southlake, but to the west.
Okay.
So I packed up, I went and rented an apartment, and I started knocking on doors because I thought I had left office on such a high, and I feel I had done such a great job, and I really wanted to continue my political career. And I made it to the runoff, but I lost, and I lost by a lot. And that was a moment of, oh my gosh, what have I done? Because I left this successful political career. I mean, 14 years as a city council woman and then mayor. And then all I could think was I'm going to be remembered for that loss. And it really weighed heavy on me. And so to answer your question, what's next? I'm really still looking for it. The books have filled a void, I'll be honest. It's made me feel, a bit energized, and I love going in front of a group of people and having something inspiring to talk about. But I don't know what my next is. But what I think is important, and I talk about it in this book, is I don't care if you're 50 or you're 60 or you're 70 or you're 80, there can always be a what next. And we have women everywhere starting new careers, new opportunities, opening up businesses, running for office. So I'm going to sit back and have confidence that the door will open, and I'll know it's the right door.
It will.
Yeah.
It will. And I can relate because in 2015 I ran for city council in McKinney.
Oh, okay.
And lost by 18 votes.
Oh gosh.
Every vote.
I don't know
every
if,
vote does
oh,
count.
it sure does. And I
So-
don't know if it's harder to lose by a little or a lot, because I will tell you, when you lose by a lot, you're like, maybe I need to rethink this.
I will tell you it was hard.
That's got to be.
And I can relate
Oh.
because I was really involved prior to that. Sat on the Planning and Zoning Commission, was chair of the Habitat for Humanity chapter in Collin County, like did a lot of stuff, is involved in the chamber. And after that loss, I was like, is that what I'm going to be remembered for?
Oh, same thing.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I have political aspirations for the future, but there's still that little voice inside going, you're not good enough, or people aren't going to rally behind you, or they're going to remember that and be like, well, if he couldn't win that race.
Right.
So what would you tell someone? Talk to me. What would you tell me?
I'm going to tell you to go for it. Whatever your dream is what you have to follow, because you are good enough. They always say win or lose. They don't say win or fail, because there are no failures. And it took me a year to convince myself that loss wasn't a huge failure and a huge black mark.
Yeah.
But then I got to thinking, there really isn't anything more fickle than politics. And a lot of politics is being in the right place at the right time. And unfortunately, sometimes there are perfect storms where it's just not your day. So if that's your love, you keep putting yourself out in the community, you keep meeting people, you stay motivated, and you stay. And you know what? You may not ever run for office again, but something else may get you that's even a greater opportunity. But if it's meant to be politics, then you just have to forget. There are so many people that have lost and have run again and won. I mean, the state is littered with them, literally. So you just have to have confidence in yourself and make sure that the timing, what I did by going into a new district was a huge strategic mistake, huge. So I think part of the process is looking back on, why did you lose by 18 points? Or votes? What 18 people should you have gotten out to vote, or could you have gotten out to vote that you didn't get out to vote that day? And now you would go into the next race knowing that every single vote is life or death. I've got to get these votes, every single one. And that sense of panic may be just what you need to propel you into office.
Right. Great advice. Thank you.
I'll be watching I'll
Okay,
be watching to see.
What got you interested in politics?
Oh my gosh. I think I've been interested in politics since I was in high school, maybe.
And when you say interest, what does interest mean to you?
Just my father, I grew up in a house where that was the dinner conversation. We talked about it. My parents took me to vote when I was young. My father always said, I remember my father giving me maybe my 14th, 15th birthday, he gave me a check for $50. And he said, $25 of that is yours. And the other 25, I want you to go find out who your state representative, we were living in Pennsylvania at the time, go find out who your state rep is and write them a check for $25. And he said, I don't care if you give $5 or $10 or $1, but always invest in local government. And, I worked with my dad for I just stopped working with my dad a couple of years ago. So worked with him for over 25 years, and he's never given me bad advice. And I took that advice like I take all his advice. And I love that. I love meeting people that don't see things. I think I go back to being in high school and being really active in debate and being active in extemporaneous speaking and trying to convince people, always trying to convince people. And I think politics is the biggest game of, I'll give you this, you give me that. I'll give you this, you give me that. But it's working with people who you might not ever have the opportunity to work with, because maybe you see things completely differently. So I think
it's kind of a sales job, isn't it? Like, because in sales, people do business with you when they know, like, and trust you.
Right.
I think people, when they're voting, they kind of go along those same lines, right? They need to know who you are, name recognition, some sort of a connection, right?
Right.
They like you.
Right.
You can't be a total, what, and they trust you.
Right. And I think that's what makes that loss so hard, right? Because why didn't everyone come out for me? Didn't I connect with everyone? Didn't they see me as a trustworthy person capable of doing the job? So,
Yeah. It's interesting. So you said you worked with your dad. So let's talk about working with your dad and what type of business, what did you do? And
So for many years, up until recently, we were actually we had county-wide telephone directories. So for 37 years, we own about 60 telephone directories in very rural parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, East Texas. And of course, telephone books aren't as popular now, but the markets that we service are so rural that many of our directories are still being published. This will probably be the last year, next
So
year,
they're
the
still in
last
print.
year. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
still a great business. It's not a cash cow like it used to be.
Okay.
But so my father had been in that business for years, since he got out of college. That's all I ever knew my whole life was my dad worked for Reuben H. Donnelly, huge independent telephone directory company. And then he started his own business, came to Texas with Reuben H. Donnelly, but then had the opportunity to start his own business at about 55. And he took a gamble, took his life savings, his buyout from his company, picked up a few county directories as part of his package, and started his own business. And it went pretty well for about 5 years. And then a lot of the goodwill that my father had built up, people started calling him and saying, hey, we want to get out of the business. We'd like to sell our books to you. And my dad didn't have the infrastructure. My dad's the consummate salesman, not the consummate manager. And so I got the phone call as the oldest child. I got told, you're coming home to work for the family business.
Okay.
So after 14 years in the hotel business, thinking I had the greatest job ever, I packed up my family and we moved to Texas back I guess that was 96. Yeah.
Okay. And so you worked in the hotel business. What did you do there in hospitality?
My latest job was as a food and beverage director, but I traveled all over the country opening new hotels for what was at the time Stouffer Hotels and Resorts. Stouffer Frozen Lasagna, same
Right.
company,
Okay.
used to be very big in the hotel business, and I went to work for them right out of college and had a great career with them, worked all over the country. And then they became Renaissance and then went on to, I think they're part of Marriott now, but I was a food and beverage director. And my last job had actually been running Sheraton Anchorage Hotel in Anchorage, Alaska. So I lived in Alaska for a long time.
You did?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to Alaska next summer.
No way.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, you'll
So
love
on a fishing trip with some guys. And so is there anything that you would recommend me do while I'm there?
Just look at
Just
don't
look at
never
everything.
miss a second. I tell people all the time, it's the only place that looks as beautiful as those shows you watch on TV, because you always watch those outdoor shows and go, wait, I was there. I never saw that.
Right.
You will see it in Alaska. You just have to take it in. It's a different world. It smells different. It looks different. The sounds are different. It is God's country. It's absolutely the most amazing place on earth. I was there. We were in the military at the time. My husband was in the Air Force, so we were stationed there, and we were there 6.5 years. So I would have stayed there forever if I could have.
Yeah. That call that you got from your dad, what emotions went through your head? Because you have your life,
Oh yeah.
right? So what was that like?
I cried at first because I felt I didn't have a choice. My brother was in the Army. My sister doesn't live in the country. She's lived in France since, she got out of college. I'm the oldest. I am easy to guilt, very easy to guilt. And my dad didn't ask me. My dad told me. So, and God bless him, he's 92 and he'll admit it to this day that he said, I need you in the family business. So I gave my notice, and I gave 6 months notice, and packed up the kids and came to work for the Yellow Pages business. Oh, it was so depressing. It was so
Okay,
depressing.
so let's talk
So
about that a little
depressing.
bit, because like I said, I've got 4 children, and if I was to call up my oldest, who's getting married next Saturday, by the way.
Oh,
Thank you. So if I was to call her up and say, hey, need you to come, because I'm looking for my replacement in real estate. Like, I don't want to be in real estate sales for the rest of my life. I
Sure.
would like to at least have one of my children come and take over what I've built over the last 18 years, right? If I was to call her up and say, come home, I need you to be in the business.
Yeah, what would happen?
She would think I'm
Yeah.
crazy.
I think it's generational. I think it's a different generation. So I have 3 children also in their young 30s to mid 20s.
Okay.
And all the time I talk to them about coming to work for the family business and they roll their eyes and they're, oh, not happening. So I just think I always had this, yeah, I do think. I think it's my age
Okay.
and being the oldest.
Yep.
And when your parents tell you to do something, you do it. So
Yeah.
I think I still, my mom calls and says, I need you to come over and help me. I go
You're
over
there.
and help my mother. So.
Yeah. You ever wonder what it would have been like if you hadn't have?
So I write about it in my first book about getting that phone call and making the decision for our family to leave the Air Force and to go to work for my father's company. I share, it's so funny. I didn't have the nerve to talk to my dad about what he was going to pay me. I left a really good job. And when I saw my first paycheck from my father, I walked down the stairs, went out in the parking lot, sat in my car and cried.
Right.
I was like, don't you understand that you got this person who has 14 years of runs huge hotels and you're paying me what? But honestly, that's all they could afford. So it ended up working out just fine, no complaints. But I feel like I couldn't have lived with myself if my father had asked me and I had said no.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have mattered how things would
And you
eventually
wouldn't be
work out.
where you are today.
Yes. And, and going back to my father's was always pushing me to get involved, to give back. And so when I came to Southlake, he said, hey, if you want to get involved, if you want to try to be a planning and zoning commissioner or sign up for the library board or run one of the local philanthropies, go for it. I'll give you the time, whatever you need. So coming from a mom and dad who prioritize that giving back, you're right. There is no way had I stayed in the military and then gone off to do something else that I would have seen that as the same way that I see it today.
Right. What are some lessons learned that you can share with those that are tuning in?
Too many.
One,
Too many.
being a woman in business.
Yes, being a woman in business.
And then we'll get to being a woman in politics.
Right.
So let's talk about women in business.
Yeah. So in business, I came up through the job market really in the 80s and the 90s and obviously till this day. And I think, again, it goes back to having what we talked about, raising our children, having humility, having empathy, the role of being a mentor. I feel like I was born to be a mentor. Maybe I should have been a teacher. I don't know, but I love that whole idea of sharing my successes, but most importantly of the disappointments along the way. And I think in business, I never had any problem because, I remember being in a hotel and with 20, 30 managers and I was the only woman. And I never had any problems because I made sure that when I walked in the room, I was the most prepared. I walked into the meeting the most prepared. I never made any excuses for myself. Yes, I might have gone home that night and cried and cursed out my boss. But when I was in the workplace, I was always preparing for my what next, that next promotion, that next move, that next opportunity. And I didn't get so wound up in all the emotion. It's funny, in my first book, Walking in My Shoes, I share some big mistakes I made in business, treating people badly, not being accepted, getting left out. Quickly, so when I was working in the Sheraton Anchorage Hotel, I was promoted from catering director to food and beverage director. That means I ran everything, the banquets, room service, all of the restaurants. Number one, they had never had a woman in that job before. They made sure they told me that. And number two, never had anyone as young as me in that job. And they made sure they told me that. And the boss, who was probably the same age I am now, but he seemed very old to me at the time. Of course, boy, have things changed. He called me in the office and he said, as part of this promotion, we've gone ahead and hired your replacement. And I said, I don't understand. Like, what kind of message
Right.
is that going to send to everyone? Well, you're just starting out and we don't want you to be overwhelmed. I was so mad. Didn't say a word. The next day, here comes this young woman, probably 5 or 6 years younger than me, 10 times prettier than me, dressed beautifully, which in Alaska, I don't want to be, we didn't overdress because of the weather, right? So, most of the time, we dress for the weather. She was dressed like she just came from LA. She was funny. She was witty. She knew nothing about the job. I do not know why she got hired, but I decided on that day that I wasn't going to help her. That if she was perfect for the job, then she could go do the job and I was going to go be successful, and I let her flounder. And what ended up happening is we both started to fail. And it affected the hotel, it affected profitability, it affected my other managers, the assistant managers, because I didn't give her a chance. I didn't give her the same chance someone gave me when I came to work in that hotel. And how did my 60-plus-year-old boss handle it? He hired a therapist to sit down and talk to us about how we girls could get along. So, yeah. Thank heavens we've come a long way in the workplace since then. But it was embarrassing. And I finally took her to lunch and I said, listen, this is on me. I did you every disservice. I didn't mentor you. I didn't give you any guidance. I know you probably don't like me anymore, but let's try to start a new relationship. And she was gone within 2 months. I'm sure after that lunch, she said, you know where you can go. And she went and found a new job. And I honestly can't blame her. And I never did that again. And as a matter of fact, I made a point of hiring a woman to come in after her, promoted someone from the restaurant, so that I could prove to myself, but also prove to my bosses that I could work with other women. So it was very humbling. I was a young woman, maybe 32 at the time. It was very humbling. Goes back to having humility and empathy. I just didn't have it.
Yeah. So it makes me think about this book. Are there circumstances, situations where someone can be a mean girl and that's not who they are at the core? Because what you just explained to me, I was sitting here going, you're being a mean girl.
Yeah, that's why I put it in the book. I share the story because I actually shared that story in both of my books because it was a make or break for me. Yeah. So yes, you can be mean and you can do mean things, you can treat a friend cruelly, be unkind, say something unkind behind someone's back, and not be a mean girl. You have to keep pulling in that anchor and saying, okay, who am I at the heart? Am I someone who can be kind and humble? Can I apologize? I mean, even sitting down, 32 years old, I didn't have any mentors because I worked with all men. She was the first woman to come into the hotel besides me. So sitting down and saying, I'm sorry. This is on me. I did this. So yes, I've been mean in my life. As you get older, you have a lot of time for self-reflection. After you lose an election, you have a lot of time for self-reflection. But mean girls it's malicious intent, and so a lot of the stories I share in the book are to let people know that sometimes you have to invest a little more in a friend. Just because a friend lets you down doesn't make them a mean girl. Just because a friend forgets to invite you or find some other friends and maybe start spending time with them doesn't make them a mean girl. But how do you control your emotions so that you keep those people in your life? Because it's too easy to let people go these days.
It is.
It really is. And once you lose a friendship, it's almost impossible to get it back.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And as you were telling that story of you sitting down and at the lunch and that spoke volumes for your character to me, right? Because that had to have taken a lot to sit down and just be transparent and say, hey, I messed up.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And I will share with you, you asked me if I could share one story. If you'd asked me if I could share three, I would have had three for you.
Okay.
So, it's a constant it's constantly
Sure.
learning and constantly evaluating. And some of those relationships are business. Some of them are in our philanthropic life, at the PTO, just hanging out and having coffee with friends. We don't always do the right things, but it's at the end of the day, it's really how you live your life that matters. Yeah.
Now let's transition to being elected the first woman mayor of Southlake.
Oh, that was much easier.
Was that much easier? Okay.
That was much easier.
So before that, though, you were elected to the city council.
Yes.
You said all in all, it was 14 years? Is that?
Yeah, so 2004, I was elected to the city council.
Had there been other women on the city council?
Yes, absolutely. And I had the pleasure of serving with other women. And then I finally, funny story, I ran for mayor in 2015, but I always say I should have run 6 years earlier. A friend of mine jumped in, and you'll be able to relate to this. I spent so much time trying to decide if I was ready to be mayor. I was calling everyone I knew. What do you think? Will you support me? Do you think I'm ready? Millions of questions, calling people 2 and 3 times. And then I'm at home one morning, drinking my coffee. The phone rings. I don't even think it's 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's a friend, John Terrell. He serves with me on council. He says, "Hey, Laura, I decided I'm going to run for mayor. I need your support to win." And I just looked at the phone. And I'm like, oh, I wasted so much time trying to decide if I was ready.
Yeah.
And he just jumped right in there, ended up, it was wonderful because he was a great mayor for 6 years. He's a dear friend and he's been a great mentor. So not saying that it didn't work out the way it was supposed to work out, but I often find myself costing myself because I try too hard to think of every angle when I make a decision. So, but being the mayor was the best job in the world. I will say COVID was very, very difficult, a hard time for my city. But Southlake is just such an incredible place to live, such an incredible quality of life, good people, sense of community. And I felt like I was in the right place at the right time. I absolutely loved all of it.
Yeah. And before the show, you said that mayors are a reflection, you feel, of the people they represent, of their city.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Did you felt that way
Absolutely.
about you representing Southlake, right?
Absolutely. I felt really invested. My mom and dad had moved to Southlake in the 80s. Then I had moved there in the 90s. We had built our office building, our headquarters in Southlake. I felt that there was no place on earth that I was meant to be. I was meant to be in Southlake. My children were young. They were in the school district. And, we go through seasons of our lives. You're getting ready for a wedding. So at different seasons of our lives, we're looking for a different kind of give and take from our community. And during those years of raising my children and volunteering in the community, I just felt that I was in the perfect place for what I had to give and what the city needed as it continued to grow.
And you made all the big bucks as a mayor, right?
Oh my gosh. I used to love to go to the schools. I went to all the elementary schools every year to talk to the kids, usually 4th graders. And at the end, after I'm done talking, I said, "What would you like to ask me? Did the limousine bring you here?
Okay.
Do you have a hot tub in the mayor's office?"
Okay.
The kids had they think that you're the queen, right?
Oh, sure.
But I think the most wonderful thing looking back was how little girls, not even little girls, girls of all ages looked at me as a role model. As they got ready to go off to college, as they took, positions of leadership, little girls who just wanted a picture with the mayor, it just, it gave me a lot of opportunity. So money was never a thing. It's really no different than any of the philanthropy people do. You find your love, and that's where you want to give your time and your treasure.
Yeah. Did you find that being a woman in that position, that there were people that treated you differently or didn't want to negotiate with you or do anything like?
I have a pretty forceful personality, so I don't think anyone had any questions about who was in charge. But I had an incredible council, six men who, just were incredible professionals who gave so much heart and soul to the city. And it's really all about the team. And I believe that I did the job that I did because of the staff in the city of Southlake and the council members that I served with. Once in a while, a developer, I've had a few eye rolls, like, like we like the last mayor better,
Sure.
a few of those. But I just feel that going back to the comment about being in the right place at the right time and being a reflection of your community, I feel like Southlake is a very professional place to work and to serve. And developers and citizens, tend to treat people with that sense of respect.
If anyone is thinking about getting involved in politics, what would you have done differently, or what would you do the same that you've done?
I wouldn't have run for state rep.
Okay, fair enough.
I did not use my tried and true decision-making process when I decided to do that. What would I tell them? I would say, number one, you don't go into it if you cannot control your emotions. So much of the anger we see today and the willingness to just say anything just so that we're heard, there's no place for it in politics, because politics should be about getting the work of the people done. We don't need activists, we need statesmen. And so part of being a statesman is that willingness to listen to someone who doesn't see things like you do. And honestly, you may never agree with them. You may never even be able to meet them a third of the way, an eighth of the way, but you show respect that you're listening to them. They put time and energy into what they are saying to you. But so you have to be able to have class, to going back to those words, have empathy and humility. You'll get put in some situations where you just have, no idea how to handle it. Be willing to surround yourself with mentors who will give you good advice, and be willing to take that advice. There's nothing worse. I see it all the time. I get phone calls from city council people in other cities that have gone out on social media and just laid into people, and then the backlash. So you've got to be able to control your emotions and kind of package things differently. You can still say what you want to say. You can still do what you want to do, but you have to package things carefully. And I think that we need great people in politics. We need great people running for office, serving on boards and commissions. A great mayor is only as great as the person who serves on the library board or on the parks board or the P&Z commission. We need people at every single level, but I definitely tell people all the time, start with a board or commission, or maybe the city's celebrating an anniversary and you want to get involved, or a parade. Learn how it works and how working with people to make something big happen, how that goes together.
And there are quite a few boards and commissions within a city.
Oh my gosh, people have no idea, right?
Yeah, and so what I would say to that too, and I think this is what you were saying also, is find your passion. Like, if you really love parks and recreation, then serve on the Parks and Rec board, right?
Right.
If you love development and zoning and things of that, like, okay, then there's the Planning and Zoning Commission, right? Or there's all sorts of different things that people can do. I guess what I would say is, don't just serve on something just to serve.
Correct.
Make sure you have an interest, at least an interest, preferably a passion.
If you're getting as much back as you're giving, which will happen quite naturally if you get involved in the things that, fill your heart up. And even once you're elected, I always told my council members, find the things in the community that fill you up and give your time and treasure to those, because then you'll get a lot more out of being a city council person. Running around and cutting ribbons and, sticking your head in every picture, that'll wear you out. And you won't feel like you're getting any joy in return, because it can be a really fun job if you are in the right place at the right time.
When you ran, was there anything in particular that you did that you feel like, of the elections you won, that helped you win?
Yeah, so I ran one time for city council, and then I don't think anyone ever ran against me again. And then I ran for mayor, and no one ran against me again. And I made sure that I was knocking on doors, that I was going to events and talking to people outside of my comfort zone. What I've learned the hard way, but I used to know it positively. Now I've kind of learned it, hard way. But you don't know as many people as you think you know. You really don't. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the mayor of the city, if you're a state rep, you're the governor. You don't know as many people as you think you know. But reaching out and talking to someone and taking a few minutes just to acknowledge who they are. I always say, don't look over someone's shoulder when you're talking to them. Look at the person. Right? And you'll make a connection with that person, and you may never see them again. They may hear your name once in a while, but you've made a connection that neither of you will ever forget. So I went into both of my campaigns knowing that however many voices were in my ear telling me, oh, Laura, you're perfect. You've got to do it. You've got this. I had to make it happen. And that meant stopping in the aisle in Tom Thumb and saying hi to someone who I recognized from my kids' football game, whatever, just making those connections. And it was almost like building a new business. It really was, just that whole networking idea.
Yeah. Laura, our time is almost up, and I could sit here and talk to you for another full episode.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and there's so much more I wanted to. So maybe we should go have coffee or something.
There you go.
Offline. But I do want to, wrap up the show and ask 3 questions that I typically ask all my guests. And I know you've been watching some of the podcasts, so hopefully you watch till the end. We will soon find out. Who is a person that's living that you haven't met that you would like to meet?
I've actually never met Governor Abbott other than to see him from far away. And I would love to meet Governor Abbott and sit down and talk to him, because we have one of the biggest, most important economic states in the country.
Right.
And I think, to me, he's, it's almost like being the president, right? I mean, it's just rarefied air. And I would love to hear his whole story from him. So. Yeah. No. I have seen him, but from way in the back of the room with with hundreds and hundreds of people cheering for him that are up front.
Right.
But yeah, someday I'd like to sit down and chat with him.
Okay. A place that you'd like to go that you haven't been?
I would like to go to Cambodia. I have been all through South America, and why I have a passion for history of, things that were built that are on this earth that have been there for thousands of years. I mean, the number to me. And I remember seeing Machu Picchu and then reading about all of the beautiful temples that are still, in disrepair, but there in Cambodia. And I've never been to that part of the world, and I'd love to go there. I've been very fortunate. I have traveled all over the world. So I am getting to the point where there are just little spots that I haven't been to that I would like to go to.
Wonderful. I love to travel as well. So that's someplace I haven't been.
Fair.
So yeah. And an experience. Is there an experience you would like to have that you haven't had? An
experience. Yeah, I'd like to win another election. No. An experience.
I think she just told us that she's about to run for office now.
No. The only experience I can think of, I'm afraid of everything. Like, I can't ski. I can't jump out of anything. I don't want to go fast. I have to have 2 feet on the ground. So that kind of limits you. No pickleball for me. That's not happening. Okay. So, I think I just would like to try something completely new, like go to a foreign country and take a painting class. I mean, I don't think I can paint anything, but I would just love to try something that I've never in my life thought I could do, but it can't be anything scary. Nothing scary.
Nothing scary.
No, I have no interest. No.
Okay, so Halloween's not really your favorite holiday.
Yeah, pumpkins, yes.
Right.
Ghosts, no.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. And I have really enjoyed this time getting to know you a little bit and hearing part of your story. And let me know if there's anything I can ever do to help you.
Well, let me know when you're in for office
will.
next time.
I will.
Okay. Thank
Fantastic.
you, Matt.
All right, y'all, that wraps it up. Thank you for tuning in today to the Matt Hilton Show. Yay! And yeah, and please, as I said at the beginning of the episode, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and comment and share on YouTube and the Matt Hilton Show Facebook page. And we would love to see you next week. Make sure you tune in because we'll have another fascinating person with an inspiring story. Take care, y'all.
With almost 20 years of real estate experience in the North Texas area, the professional realtors at Hilton Realty Advisors have helped over 500 clients with their housing needs. Hilton Realty Advisors covers all areas of real estate: buying, selling, building, investing, and renting. We deliver the keys to homeownership to all through integrity, love, and joy. Call us today for all of your real estate needs.
If you'd like to contact Matt or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.